really wanted to share with you a case study of change that I personally managed when I was working in the UK. So this is a case study of an organizational change that I personally was involved in. So about 16 years ago, I was working for a hospital group called BUPA. So BUPA ran around 30 hospitals across the United Kingdom, and they were a private hospital group. And I was the head of HR who was responsible for 14 of these hospitals. Now, as you can understand, from a commercial point of view, running hospitals is very expensive and very costly. And the BUPA group as a whole decided that they wanted to focus more on their membership and their insurance arm and less so on their hospital group. So they decided to sell part of the business. And the part of the business they decided to sell was the hospital arm of the business. So I had been working for BUPA Hospitals for a number of years. And it's an organization and a brand that was very well recognized, and they built up a lot of trust and value in the name. You had people working in the hospitals who'd been there throughout the whole history of their employment life cycle. They'd had family members working at the hospital. Their children had also worked at the hospital. So there was long associated tangible reasons for people to feel anxious about this change. So I remember the very, very first time I was told that this change is going to take place, that BUPA are selling the hospital arm of the business, and we are going to recreate from scratch completely a completely new entity who it hadn't even got a name or a logo at that point. And what that will mean for us as an organization is we are going to leave the brand of BUPA and we're going to set up under a new logo, a new name. And I, as the senior leader in HR, was going to play a key role in disembarking this change and ensuring that our employees and our staff transitioned well into the new way of working, because it was still an existing business, but just under new branding. And I remember really clearly the role that we had to play to give people those reassurances that this change was a positive for the organization. We talked about the investment of having, there were venture capitalists coming in to look at the organization and to invest in the areas that they wanted to. So, for example, each of the hospitals that I worked had a different model. So they might have focused on oncology, or they might have focused on orthopedic surgery. But it was to ensure that we were being more commercially savvy and responding to the regional needs of each hospital, because they were based across the country. And I remember one of the tasks that we had to do was to go out to each of our hospitals and talk to them about the changes. And remember, at this time, we didn't even have a brand and we didn't even have a logo. So we had to go and win over people's hearts and minds and explain to them the rationale for the change, but also give them lots of reassurances that, look, in your hospital, we are going to rebrand. We are going to change the logo outside the building. But the constant that's going to remain is, if you work at reception, you're still going to come into the same reception desk. You're still going to be working in the same building that you are. You're still going to be working with the same colleagues. You're still going to be working with the same patients. The only thing that's changing is the packaging on the outside. And it's really important that you're clear about the role that you are playing in the greater size of the organization as a whole. So I remember being in London and working on the rebranding going from BUPA to Spire. And as you can see, the logo changed from this kind of heartbeat that you'd see on a monitor in the BUPA blue. And we, as a part of a working committee, came up with a design for this two S-shaped Spire Healthcare logo. So we rebranded it completely. We looked at the colors and we were a working committee. And it was great thinking behind, you know, communicating this change, because we, as the HR people and the people working in marketing and operations, we were going to be those individuals that were talking to teams about landing this change. So it was really helpful to be involved in creating the logo. It was really helpful to think about what branding and colors we wanted, because it helped us to communicate that change to people who hadn't been as close to it. And to the point that Brenda made, you know, it was so important for us to over communicate the changes that were happening.